My name is John Sarrouf, and I'm the Director of Strategic Partnership at Essential Partners. And the organization was designed to really help communities that are divided over issues that are based in people's beliefs, worldviews, values, talk to one another and share what really matters to them and get beyond the stuck conversation that they might be in. And it might be that it's a conflict, or it could be something that they aren't able to talk about, where there's so much fear that it's going to pull the community apart that they're just silent about it. So I think of it not just being about sort of conflict resolution, but actually giving people an opportunity to have a conversation that they haven't been able to have before. Yeah, there's so many different issues that come up in dialogues that we talk about. Lately we've been doing some dialogues around gun ownership and the role of guns in communities. Done some dialogues around the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Again, it's one of these issues that we feel strongly about, yet we're in a community where we feel very differently about that, and how do we talk about it? So a synagogue that wants to talk about that issue might come to us and say, help us, this is a difficult conversation. We've had conversations about the political landscape of our country right now. College campuses, as they're talking about gender, they're talking about race. If we think about very specific issues, there was a college campus that came and wanted to talk about police officers on campus, and they were just making a decision that police officers would carry guns around campus. What would it be like to make that kind of a change and be able to talk about that in the community? The college campus is an amazing place to have dialogue, because these are communities where people have been invited to come and live together, study together, talk about their deepest beliefs, and learn together. This is a place where we really have an opportunity to live out the full diversity of our country, of our communities. And people are realizing that we don't necessarily have the tools to do that. How do you actually talk across the very different socioeconomic, racial, historical, sometimes cultural, even language differences that we have? And if a community doesn't have the capacity within to really support students, then it can get very difficult and it can fall apart. Again, either people can have very big arguments where there are protests and that kind of thing, or they just don't talk about it at all. You have silence. And that's really the opposite of what a university should be. And a university is a place where you should be able to bring all of your ideas and engage your ideas with others. So we actually are trying to make space for people to bring the fullness of their diversity to a college campus so that they can talk to each other and engage their ideas with one another. So some of the things that we get stuck on is that we begin to make assumptions about each other. So we talk about the Hillary Clinton voter or the Donald Trump voter. I mean, there is no single Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump voter. It just doesn't exist. There are a huge variety on both sides and reasons why you would. So making assumptions about a real simple other is a real big problem. I would also imagine that the way we talk to each other, either social media or when we talk in class, and make sort of sweeping stereotypes about one another, that's another thing that gets us into trouble. So there are two things that we teach and ask people to do in the dialogues that we promote, which is to listen to understand, right? Not listen to find fault. I'm not listening to see where you're going to say something that I can jump on you, but actually listen to understand what you care about, what you want me to understand about you. And also to speak in order to be understood, not to speak to convince you, but to speak so that you can understand me. We're not, in this moment, we're going to suspend the desire to convince each other, because when we are just trying to convince each other, we dig in and we stop listening to each other in a real deep way. So we want to engage that listening. We also want to teach people to ask questions, to ask really genuinely curious questions, not the I gotcha question and not the yeah, but what about question. We want people to ask each other questions that really get to the complexity of an issue, that get to where a particular belief comes from, the story behind it, and what's really at the heart of something, what people really care about. so that we can understand each other better. What we find is that people have a lot more in common than they expected. And in these political debates, we tend to focus, and actually the whole debate is meant to have us focus on what our differences are. That's how candidates differentiate each other. That's fine. But if all we do is spend our time differentiating from one another, then we're where we are now, divided. So we begin to have a conversation where we begin to share some of the values that we care about together. And in those moments, we learn something more about each other. We actually find a lot more potential for common ground, for common action, and certainly for a sense of wanting to be in the same community together.